Morning. Thanks very much indeed, Rosanna, for that introduction. And remember, Rosanna will be back straight after me to tell you a bit more about how to navigate this amazing world that we've created for you today, because I can't tell you how overwhelmed I am by the scale of energy, effort, and creativity that's gone into designing this event today. When we do a showcase in other times, we've done it as a physical face-to-face event with lots of events in lots of different places around town. And so today we would normally speaking have been probably in Plymouth, spread all around the town in different kinds of venues, and you, the audience, would have arrived there last night or this morning, and you'd be walking around to different parts of the city, looking at different kinds of expos and meeting people and being able to network face-to-face. What we've actually done is try to recreate something like that in this online format, which Rosanna will explain a bit more after I've finished speaking. But I guess just to say at the beginning, how amazing is it that actually right now, in this moment, we are able to coordinate such an event online from our kitchens and our studies and our sitting rooms and our studios over the Southwest and reach out to an audience across the whole world. When I was coming up working with video as a new technology in the 1980s, mounting international television link-ups was actually both the subject of massive technological experiment in the broadcast industry and, of course, of amazing creative experimentations through artists like Nam June Paik, who linked together different events across, for instance, New York and Tokyo. And it was a creative experiment. And now here we are today able to do it in this way. And I think that's a real testament to how creative people drive forward technologies and make the future possible and create the vision for how the future might become. And in a way, that's one way of understanding what our whole network is. It's a network for people who want to create a future with the visions of what they can do creatively with the technology that we have to hand. So a sincere welcome to this R&D Showcase Day in the field of automation. We are the Southwest Creative Technology Network, and I am John Dovey. I'm a professor of screen media at the University of the West of England at Bristol, and also the director of this network program. We're funded for 3 years by Research England to build innovation capacity across the Southwest. We do this by working with our partners, Bath Spa, UWE, Plymouth, and Falmouth universities, and our production partners Collider in Exeter and Watershed in Bristol. I don't want to go into too much else about what the structure is. You can look at all that on the website. You can go to the website to find out more about the range of actions that we do to support creative approaches to technological development in the Southwest. We run a fellowship scheme, for instance, that's at the real heart of our work, and you'll be hearing from some of our fellows through the day. We invest in prototypes, and if you really want to find out about this network and what it's really about, make sure you come to the Meet the Prototype session. It's on at 10:30, because you'll see all the new films that have been produced that profile those prototypes. And I think the selection of those films gives you a real sense of what this network is actually about, both in its creative, technological, and ethical manifestations. We also offer micro grants, business support, debate, critique, and connectivity. And at this point, 2.5 years into the program, the connections we've made, the people we've supported, and the new kinds of spaces that we've grown through our partners are all taking on a life of their own, which is exactly as it should be. The network is lively, it's proliferating, and it's building its own creative autonomy. We're supporting the development of new ideas, new goods, new services, and new businesses. But in some way, the true products of this network is the people that we support, the lives that we change, and the connections that we make that live on after the funding has run out. And I want to take that opportunity today to talk to you for 10 minutes about where we're thinking of going and what we're thinking of the future of technological development in our region might be and the shape it might take. We've been thinking a lot about our legacy and about our plans for the future as we look towards the moment when our funding from our good friends at Research England runs out next year. What's the point of a creative technology network at this point in time? What should we be doing now? What challenges should we be trying to meet? How should we be working? I think it's pretty clear to everybody, isn't it, that the heroic moment of creative technology is come and gone. In different ways, all the partners who host this network grew by surfing the wave of techno enthusiasm that was a powerful force for economic growth in the first decades of this century. Creativity and digital have refashioned our world. Our entire experience of time and space has been retooled by the everyday mixed realities that we now inhabit. Reputations have been built, investment streams have changed, and new future visions have been generated. And even when we designed this network in 2016-17, we were still able to scrape the dregs from the barrel of technologically determined optimism by laying claim to the territories of immersion, automation, and data as ground for transformative innovation. But if there's one thing that we can learn from the long decline of the Silicon Valley dream of tech transformation, it's that the technology is only as good as the context that it meets. Or to put it another way, technologically based dreams rarely survive first contact with the real world and its laws of unintended consequences. Users do different things with technology to how technology was envisaged. Markets find different uses for technology. Power finds different uses of technology to the uses that designers thought of. The meaning of tech innovation is determined by the context in which it finds itself. So the inventiveness and the brilliance of the young Steve Jobs or Bill Gates come to fruition in the era of neoliberalism, where money has been the only measure of any kind of human value, and where the ideologies of deregulation allow unfettered capitalization to inflate these tech giants of the modern world to their current terrifying positions of monopoly power. Amazon, Google, eBay, Netflix, Facebook, and the rest are in the business of harvesting our desires, our attention, and some would say our consciousness, and turning it into shareholder profit. Ever since WikiLeaks and Cambridge Analytica, it's become clear that we're engaged in a new kind of international and propaganda warfare. The newly distributed means of information production created through the internet is not, sadly, the source of a new enlightenment, but a site for the production of mass, algorithmically targeted disinformation, fantasy, and lies. A conspiratorial muddle of bot-driven misinformation that is beyond the wildest nightmares of George Orwell, but plays perfectly into the hands of the global oligarchies who feed on destabilization and create more and more inequality through their brilliant exploitation of disaster capitalism. And that's all before you even get onto the last 2 years since our program began. The world is either burning or being flooded whilst we fail to agree on zero carbon targets. The nation is divided as never before, not on the old class lines, but around education, mobility, and a sense of belonging, between the anywhere people and the somewhere people, between populism on the one hand and the new explosions of contemporary identity politics on the other, all conducted, amplified, and distorted through the corrosive anonymity protocols of online troll cultures. And the existential fragility of all of our lives and of all of our systems and of all of our economies is being revealed day by day by this dreadful pandemic, the latest 21st century threat sent to challenge our human right to a future. So this is the context. This is the context for thinking about technological development. This is the context that technologies will meet. This is the context for innovation and for creativity. So we return to the question, what should such a network be for? Well, before we get too gloomy, despite how challenging things seem, we should perhaps also, as an academic, of course, I would say, take an historical context. Back in the 1980s, it seemed pretty bad too. It was another apocalyptic moment where mutually assured destruction seemed probable at the height of the Cold War. Irish men were starving themselves to death in British prisons. Women were camped out at Greenham Common. The working class was being demolished, and the first waves of queer, black, and feminist identity politics were rocking the boat. in the way that they are now doing again, even as our inner cities were burning in riots repeatedly. And at the same time, there was a pandemic. People that I knew were dying around me from what was eventually known as AIDS. Digital cultures were one of the new forms of creativity and innovation that grew out of those disruptions. And now we have new adjustments and disruptions to cope with. And we have the technology too. The question is, what do we do with it to address the conditions in which we find ourselves? So, of course, we're living in massively contradictory times. We have enormous potential, we have enormous threat, enormous challenge. So at this time of turmoil and uncertainty, we have to dream something better. We have to be as good as the disaster capitalists in being able to see creative opportunity in structural change. How can we adapt and ameliorate fragility, division, and mass insecurity for creative industries that has become our context? We've already been forced to adapt to COVID-19, delivering much of our recent program online and things and expanding into events like today. We've successfully brought many of our fellows into the collaborative virtual space in a way that wouldn't have been possible if we'd met in person. And we've overcome barriers of geography. I know there are people here from all over the world today, which is amazing. We've reached international audiences and we've reduced our environmental impact. But we've also found that this is an uneven field. Not everybody can access the kind of high-speed connection that we need to conduct ourselves in this virtual way. Not everybody's domestic conditions are in any way supportable, friendly to working lives spent online in the kitchen or the bedroom with caring responsibilities and children and so on. The conditions of the pandemic affect different people at different levels. And that's something that we need to understand when we think about working online. So because of this virtual only collaboration doesn't reduce inclusion and accessibility issues we've learned, it shifts them. And in some cases, it magnifies them. So one of the things that we obviously need to do in the next period of time is to look for the best role that we can in supporting creative businesses in the post-pandemic world. We know that the pandemic is having a devastating effect on creative industries, especially those that depend on live face-to-face encounters. Elsewhere, micro businesses with online revenue streams are surprisingly resilient. We need to find new ways of continuing the work we've started in our Lessons from Now program, funding work that will help people to survive the COVID recession. In a post-contact creative economy, we will need to design new methods for the work of cultural innovation to continue. So we want to build capacity for innovation by reflecting on our own processes. And we want to be part of finding creative industries new ways to work that combine both their online and their offline realities into new income streams. Secondly, our priority has to be thinking about how we reorient our resource around the idea of sustainability. You'll see today how our methods produce impact outside of creative industries in other kinds of industrial sectors. We've learned that creative industry approaches can support innovation across the board in many different spaces. And so we want to bring this cross-disciplinary regional capacity to bear on the climate challenge, which of course itself needs to work out with many talents and at many different scales in order to be met. We think that we can bring the unique capacities of the creative industries, imagination, storytelling and experience design to the transformations produced by the climate challenge. And the Southwest has historical strengths in this sector. For instance, Sustrans, the Schumacher Institute, the Eden Project, Ecotricity, it's a key part of the region's profile. So we want to try and build a bridge between creative industries and the region's growing green economy. We want to build on immersion, automation and data to produce outputs and products that don't merely translate climate science for users, but instead use the full range of creative approaches to design new experiences that help people better understand their role in the transition to sustainable and inclusive growth and the actions that they can take to make meaningful steps towards that future. So thirdly, a future creative technology network can't achieve any of this unless it addresses diversity. We've always stressed diversity of talent that recognizes how you need to have lots of different kinds of mindset in the room, but we can and we must do better in valuing social diversity too. Any innovation that's to work in this world has to work for everyone and not just reflect the privileges of its designers. Southwest Creative Technology Network has begun to build a diverse network by developing relationships across communities and thinking about how we promote our opportunities and recognizing that innovation needs to be for everyone. Inclusive innovation also requires that we change our structures so that we're well equipped to support that kind of work. We need to develop better models of inclusive governance for projects like this, an issue that we know is of urgent relevance to creative technology and academic sectors, and we need to share that learning about how we do that. So we need to expand our stakeholder networks and ensure that the delivery team, the leadership team, and the steering board are all redesigned to deliver on our goals to be more diverse. All of those three things have to be achieved through a context that I think is about the necessity of care as a framework for understanding the ethics of technology. And I'm not sure that I really know exactly what that means in practice at this point, but it seems vitally important. I think we already emphasize a great deal of care in our methods. We try to understand how the values that constitute the network drive people's motivation. What do people care about, and how do we care for that? How do we look after people in a network at this basic level? But we also know, don't we, that care is becoming a key issue for us all, that the pandemic has revealed the mutual bonds of care that we rely upon and has made care a peer-to-peer community practice again. So somehow we have to work out how our creative innovation can support bonds of care and connection rather than work to further isolate and divide us. In this, especially in this kind of forced virtualization that we're all being rushed into due to the pandemic. Finally, we won't achieve any of this unless we're as creative as we can be. Creativity is our core value. Despite this dominant mode of surveillance capitalism that I referred to earlier, I'm still really optimistic about technology and the fantastic ingenuity and inventiveness that humans can bring to it. And I hope you'll agree with me when you see some of the work that we've been producing through the day. There were 62 people involved in presenting 28 live sessions today, and you're going to see the most amazing range. And I hope you'll agree with us that the talent across our region is doing new and distinctive work with its own flavor and its own push towards developing work that have ethics built into them and can look forward to building creative, inclusive and sustainable futures on the basis of the platform that we're building now. I want to just do some thanks before I sign off, especially to Rosanna for hosting, Andy Wood in the back room, who's actually vision mixing and controlling today, and Charlie Tapp and Fiona from our colleagues in Exeter at Collider, who've just done the most amazing job of pulling the whole of this day together, and of running the Charlie's been at the helm of this automation prototyping process from the beginning. So big up to Charlie Tapp in Exeter for actually pulling all this together, and of course for the rest of our team, all of whom have been working really hard on the design, the marketing, the PR, and for the prototype teams and the fellows who are going to be sharing their insights work with you today. I hope you're going to have an amazing time. Listen to what Rosanna has to say about navigating the platform. Take some time to familiarize yourself with it in the breaks, and keep in touch with us as we move into what we hope will be a positive future together. Thanks very much. Bye.